So what is something that you feel like you've learned this year that has been important to you?
Well, I'll give one thing professionally and one personally that I've learned. Um, Before the pandemic started, my work was about evenly split between beer writing and beer events. So I would lead beer classes and give talks and things like that. And that obviously, that side of it went right out the window as soon as the pandemic started. So for about a month or so, I was in a little bit of a panic of how I was going to pick up the writing enough to make up that side of my work. Fortunately, my wife's income was not affected. And since I quit my full time job about 4 years ago to start freelancing, starting from scratch at that time, her income is still the larger part of our household income. So we're fortunate that we weren't in quite the desperate situation I would have been otherwise. But for a little while there, I was feeling a lot of pressure of like, well, how am I going to make that up? How am I going to take more assignments? And the assignments were really being reduced. I mean, some publications were having to stop altogether, and some were having to cut back. And what I noticed over time across the pandemic was kind of ironic and really unexpected for what I would have anticipated if you had told me this was coming, and that I found myself getting more selective in the writing I wanted to do rather than just grabbing at every single opportunity that was there just because I needed to. And of course, there's privilege in that. You know, like I said, my household income was not affected as much as it might have been, so I was able to be selective in that way. But I found myself, rather than scrabbling for every bit of work that I could get because opportunities were reduced, I actually found myself taking that opportunity to step back and look at what I wanted to be doing from a beer writing standpoint, and really pick and say, okay, this is the direction I want to go. These are the assignments I really want to be doing, and kind of let that chart a course for what hopefully will be post pandemic at some point, and looking at the things I really want to do. Since I started freelancing 4 years ago, every 6 months or so, I'll sit down and kind of just evaluate what I've been doing, what I want to be doing, and try to answer questions for myself like, what is the voice I want to be writing with? What are the niches or topics that I want to be cornering? What are the stories I want to be telling? And of course, as you know, from the beginning there, that couldn't always be every bit of my work. You had to take paycheck assignments and things like that. And that ratio has switched to be more and more the things that I really want to do. And I think this pandemic has kind of completed the final gap of that faster than I would have anticipated. Would have taken a little bit longer for me to switch over everything to what I wanted. And this has kind of shortcut that a little bit. Not the way I would have wanted to do it, but it's allowed me to say, okay, a lot of work has been taken away from you. What do you want your freelance writing and events to look like if they could be exactly what you wanted? And start to be that selective now. And I think that will help me afterwards to be able to pick up again the things that I really want to be doing rather than things that were taking up time and maybe weren't getting me toward the goal that I actually wanted.
Yeah, one of the consistent things I feel like I've heard from people, both our peers who cover the beer industry, but then writers at large too, is that over the course of 2020, they felt a very strong draw to focus on things that compel them personally and professionally, and not just search for things to fulfill volume, but find quality both in terms of the work that they could produce as well as intrinsic feelings it might provide them. So as you found yourself able to make that transition, was there a key, or was there something that you felt really struck you to be able to feel comfortable going from just trying to find a volume of things to going to things that really kind of made you feel better and more fulfilled with what you were doing?
Sure. Well, one part of that, and again, there's no getting around this, there's privilege in the fact that I had the ability to be selective in that way financially. You know, with my wife's income, I get to make those choices, and not everybody is in that situation to get to do that. So there was some, uh, as a child, I grew up very low income, and it took a long time into my adulthood to be able to accept financial security when it arrived. And so that's been a process for me. And it took a little while into the pandemic for me to relax into that and say, no, 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 you really can take a step back and and pick the things that you want to do. But I think beyond that, some of it was bred of boredom. It was there wasn't enough work, and I'm sitting there. I've got the assignments that I can get, and I'm completing those, and I've still got time. I was like, well, okay, I've got extra time. What do I want to do? And using that to look at, if I didn't have to worry about money at all, and I could just do exactly what I wanted to be doing within this field, what would it be? And working from that position, and then working back to get that to match the reality of, what are the assignments that I can get right now? What are the stories I can pitch right now? What are the places that are taking those kind of stories? And working from that direction, I think, and kind of shifting that mindset from, I've got to make money. How do I do that doing what I want, to what do I want to do? And working back toward, how do I, get that to match up with paying assignments, I think was sort of a worldview shift that helped a lot.
As you've been able to experience that, give me a 60-second review of a story you wrote in 2020 that you found to meet all of these things that you were looking for, that it was interesting to write and report about, but also felt, personal and was good to put out into the world.
Sure. Well, one that I think definitely fits that actually came I had written it really before the pandemic started, and it was published right around like that first lockdown weekend in March. That was the Bell's Two Hearted story for Pellicle magazine. Um, the things that really set me off when I'm writing a story are uh, descriptive language, creating a setting, sensory description, the story behind the production of a beer or a brewery. I'm definitely, for my own stories, I'm less interested in the business side of things, or the market and things like that. I know that's something you tend to focus more on and do a great job with. Those aren't the stories that I tend to want to write. And so with that one, getting kind of just a blank canvas and carte blanche from Pellicle to just write about one of my favorite beers, and a beer that is a favorite for a lot of people. So there are other more tenured writers who might have been in the position to tell that for more people. Getting the permission to write that and the space to write that and be able to say, I love this beer. I have memories with this beer. How do I make that interesting to thousands of other people? And being able to talk to the principals involved, to Larry Bell and John Mallett and all those folks. I think that was a story where I got to finally say, and I'd done a few before that, of course, that were along those lines, but that was one where I felt like, that's it. I want to be able to point to a few stories like that every year that are sort of the tent poles of the kind of writing that I want to do.